All right. Okay, so user.username plus has the email plus user.email, and then let's put a period on the end of it or something like that. Okay, so you can see how it starts to get a little more complicated. And you have all these plus signs and things that we're trying to add together. You know, maybe it's a more complicated string that we're trying to create. A lot of this is like, or if you're trying to create URLs or things like that, it can become really tricky too. So I'll say username Ben has email underscore.com. Okay, so we're just passing in this object. I'm defining the object in line like this, and then we're passing it in, and then creating that string that we run. So, oh, not say hello, what's it called? Info. Okay, so Ben has the email, ben@lambdaschool.com. Okay, so this is, so an interesting thing about it, well, the thing, it starts to get tricky to handle longer and larger strings, and when there's lots of variables that need to be plugged in. And so in ES6, there is a simpler syntax that we can use. And so we use backticks. And then you can get rid of the quotes, all the quote marks. And so, and then any variables that you have, you wrap them in this $ bracket thing. And so let me just show you a final version of what this looks like. So you open bracket, $, and then curly braces like that, curly brackets. Okay, so then essentially it allows you to just plug in your variables into the string, and it just makes it a little easier to write. And so again, I have a backtick that opens the string and a backtick that closes it. Then I use this $ and then the curly braces around any variables that I want to have like read and plugged into the string. So this right here builds out this string, and so we call this a template literal. Here's the code. Okay, so there's a template literal, again, is what this is called. Okay. So this is one of the, anyway, this is a fairly easy one, I think, to just like plug in. If you're ever trying to do lots of string concatenation, this is a much easier way to do it. Okay, another shortcut that I wanted to cover is when we are adding functions like as a method onto an object. So let's say we have const say hello, which is equal to function, and then we're going to say console.log, and then I'll use template literal, and so I'll say this dot username says hello. Okay, so we have this actually well, actually this is kind of funny. I was combining different types. There we go. Okay, so you have this say hello function right here. It's going to use this dot username though. And so down below, we're going to say const user is equal to this object. And then we'll say username is Ben. And then before, if we wanted to add a property onto an object where we have like a variable in scope and we're wanting to add that as a property onto the object, like this, you'd write say hello colon say hello. So the one on the left is the key that will be on the object. The one on the right is a variable referencing a value in the scope. And so real quick, I'll just set this up so I can run it. See Ben says hello, that prints out just fine. There's a shorthand syntax in ES6 where you can actually just put the variable name. And then, you know, if it was written up above, username, oops, just put a comma after it like this. But yeah, and so if the key for the object, when you're using this type of a syntax to define an object, if the key is the same as a variable in scope for like what the value would be, you can just type in the variable like that. That's a shorthand syntax. If you look in your homework files, so like in the array files or the object ones, if you look down on the bottom of those, if you look down on the bottom of those, the way that I'm exporting a lot of that stuff into the test files, I use that. I'm defining an object, and then I use that shorthand syntax. So that way I don't have to have a key associated with it. Or I don't have to write it out. So I don't have to write each colon each and map colon map. So it just kind of condenses it. So again, that one's a fairly straightforward little shortcut. Oops. Okay, so I just pasted in the second example. Let's see. Okay, all right, so let's go over another one. All right, so this one is, let's say we had our function here. Oops. So we have our const find volume, XYZ. And so then we're just going to go return x times y times z. So you have 3 different arguments that are going to come in. So, we can do console.log. Well, I'm going to say const volume is equal to find volume of 555, like that. Console.log volume, clear run, 125. Okay. So, this is just similar to that example that we had earlier. We have just a function here, takes in 3 different arguments, we pass them in, we're multiplying them, and then that result's being returned. The result's being stored in the volume variable, and then we print out the volume variable to the console. So we see 125 right there. Okay, so there is a kind of a shorthand syntax. Well, so we can do something where we can say const, let's say const dimensions is equal to an array like this. Then what we can do is we can say ... dimensions like that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take the array and it's going to spread it out. So this is called the spread operator. So the spread operator is going to take the array and it's doing something very similar to a apply. So if you remember call, apply, and bind, this is kind of doing the same thing without doing any of this binding stuff. So it just spreads it out. So dimensions right here is an array, and it breaks it out to where the item in the first index in the array, so the 0 index, will be the first argument. The item in the first index, or 1 index, will be the next item. Item in the 2 index will be the next item. So it just like spreads them out. So the dimensions, 3 items in it, we spread it out, put it, pass it into the function in order like that. Okay. So and then the next and final thing that I want to touch on is the rest operator. So instead of a function, let's say, I'm just going to say a function foo. Well, no, we'll talk about that in a later. Never mind. So I'm going to do const foo is equal to arrow function like that. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say ... args, and then do console.log args like that. And so what this is going to do, this is going to grab all the arguments that are there and put them inside of an array. So if I called foo with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever is, whatever I'm passing in, it's going to be all collected and put inside of a single array. And so you see here, I'm printing out that args array and yeah, prints it out. So it took all the arguments, filled them into an array. If I can make some different variable references for items, and then I can do this rest parameter. It's called the rest parameter, and it's going to grab the rest of the arguments that are coming up. So here we have 2, 3, 4, and ASDF are the ones that are being collected by args because X and Y are both grabbing these first two. Okay, so there is a built-in arguments like pseudo array that you get inside of functions that use the function keyword that is a reference to arguments. Yeah, okay, so Patrick's asking about this. So the main difference between that is that, well, let me just show you what it is real quick. So you have to use the function keyword to have access to arguments. But if I did foo like this, then we get this array that prints out. So this is fine. The only thing is, though, is that arguments does not have access to the array prototype, which we'll go into prototype stuff a lot more later. But essentially what that means is that arguments does not have a lot of methods on it. So if we do arguments.push 6, then there's going to be an error because it does not have push. It's not like a normal array. It doesn't have all those methods on it. And so if we do something like this, we do ... args, it's the same thing where we have this array of all the different values. Still works the same, but we can do stuff like args.push 6 on it. We can also use it inside of an arrow function. And so if I go back to the arguments style, if I were to switch this to an arrow function, oops. Okay, okay, all right, so this is going to, okay, so if I try to run this, then arguments is not defined. So we are not given an arguments inside of a arrow function. Same with like this keyword, we won't have access to it. And so we can use the rest parameter to essentially do the same thing. Okay. Can you talk a bit more about const? How are you using it in these examples? I understand using const and let in place of var, but not in the function context. Can you walk through that a bit? Yeah. Okay, so right here, we're writing our functions like this because an arrow function by default does not, it's not a named function. Arrow functions are always anonymous functions. Anonymous functions, again, are functions that they don't have a name to them. And so an anonymous function needs to be attached to something else in order to still exist in memory. Otherwise, it's just going to get garbage collected. So essentially, it's kind of like when we did, back when we said var foo is equal to function like this. It's essentially that same. Like it's doing the same thing, just not with the function keyword. It's so we're using that function expression syntax. So we're saying const. And then instead of using the function keyword, we have the fat arrow. So that's how we're defining it this way. So it's a function expression syntax. So we're using the function expression syntax that's similar to what we had in ES5, and so that's why we're writing them this way, because you can't do named functions with arrow functions. So like you can't just define an arrow function and then be able to reference it later. You can't just like put a name on it or something, because this is all an arrow function is. And so you have to attach it to a variable in order to be able to use it somewhere. Whereas like functions, normal functions in JavaScript, yeah, you have an anonymous function like this, so you have the same issues. Like it's not attached to anything, we can't use it anywhere. It's going to be immediately deleted because there's nothing that's like referencing it. And so, but if we give it a name, then all of a sudden we have a variable name in this scope that we can use to reference the function by. Let's see. right, cool. Let's see. Yeah, so you'd want to use const because yeah, a function's something that you're not going to want to overwrite. So yeah, just use const with a function instead of let, and then use const with your data structures as well. So use const for functions, const for arrays, const for objects, and then use let for like the variable I instead of a for loop, you know, or use let if you have like another counter variable, something that you're going to be reassigning. Yeah, honestly, there's not a ton of use cases for let. Like most of the time, it's just going to be, you're just going to be using const. All right, cool. So just wanted to cover some ES6 stuff. We're going to go into classes a little more in depth later. Not today, but so I'm passing on that tonight because I want to visit that in a little bit more depth. Yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty good guest speaker tomorrow, but I'll give you guys some more details about that later once we get those details finalized. Okay, so can we use the comma instead of this .name equals options.name? Let's see. So do you mean like, so like in the constructor, so like if we did class user so there's me, an object like that. Okay, so yeah, so there's some different shortcuts and things that we can do here as well. And so the main shortcut that we're going to do here, because we're doing a this .name and we're appending it onto this. And so the shortcut that applies here is when you have an object that's coming in as your argument, you can actually grab specific properties off of it, and then we can eliminate having to do options.name. So we could say like, if it was like name and email. So this is another really useful one. We'll be using this a lot when we get into React. So you'll pick it up then. So don't worry about this too much right now. You'll be seeing it everywhere for the next like couple months. And so it's totally gonna sink in and you'll get it. So that's just about it. So we see the, oh yeah. There, so we have email and name. So, and these are the major ES6 features. Like this is honestly everything we've covered. This is pretty much it for like ES6. And there's a lot of JavaScript we've covered this week, but this is pretty much like the depth of it. Like we're gonna iterate and get it to where you guys are very comfortable with these things, but there's not very much more like JavaScript left. Like we've covered like pretty much all of it. Like there's like prototype stuff to get into and memory management and you know, maybe like some multi-threading stuff, but this is pretty much it. You know, like recursion and you know, closure, stuff like that. Like, so we're going to work on it a lot and get you guys to like a mastery level, but we've pretty much introduced all the different topics that are there in JavaScript, and so JavaScript specifically. And so we're going to get you really, really good at them and expand into deeper CS fundamentals and things like that. But these are the, this is a majority of the JavaScript language specifically. So as a programming language, we've covered most of it. And so then we're going to learn how to use these features in interesting ways, and we're going to cover the last bit of it as well and just go into a lot of depth. So don't feel bad if you know you've been struggling with a lot of this stuff. Like it's a lot, but it's actually like, you know, it's a finite amount of material when it comes to the programming language. you can learn all of it. So anyway, so we just want to use the comma for stative functions. Use methods. So either methods or properties. So it works for properties too. The reason that we don't use it here is because we're using the dot notation to make the assignment, and we're not doing I forget the term for it, but we're not using the brackets to define the object. So here's an example of where we would use a another object assignment shorthand thing. So if I said const name is equal to Ben, then const email is equal to that. I say const me is this object, and then I could go name and then email. So ES5 way would be var me, and I'd say name, email. So this would be the ES5 way of doing it, but then ES6 we can condense it down like that, so you don't have to duplicate everything. So yeah, it works for properties, and so it doesn't have to just be methods. So methods are functions on objects, but then properties are just anything that's attached to an object. So yeah, it works for anything that you're wanting, any variable that you have in scope that you're wanting to add onto an object. When you're defining an object using this syntax, you can use this shorthand. So okay. All right. So we're just going to keep plugging away on this project. Reach out to instructors for help. We're going to keep working with everyone and helping you guys figure as much of this out as possible, and just hoping you guys all rise up from where you're at. And then we'll be getting into some interesting data structures and algorithm stuff next week. So we'll be doing this JavaScript stuff for the next 2 days. Yeah, if you finish everything, maybe if you either finish it early. If you do, reach out to me. I can always get more stuff for you to do. I think most of the students will, will complete less than half of it by the end of the week. So that's just generally seems to be about where the cost is at. Oh yeah, so some of the questions that are in here are things that you could see, many of these are the types of things that you would see in an interview for even up to mid-level JavaScript engineer positions, or even senior level developer stuff. This is stuff that they would ask. So anyway, so there's challenging stuff in here, but it's all good to know, and you need to learn it all. All right, thanks everyone. So we'll keep working on projects for the last little bit of class. And your class is done in 23 minutes. And then we will meet up again tomorrow at 9 o'clock. All right. Thanks everyone. Take care and have a good night.